Welcome to Always Blue. I'm Tim Raleigh, President and Vice Chancellor of Mount Royal University.
And I'm MRU alum Scott Cruickshank. And today on the pod, we are joined by Lindsay Calder Recknell.
Lindsay is a corporate wellness consultant and MRU alum. Welcome to Always Blue, Lindsay.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
I believe you came to Mount Royal University in the late 90s.
Now you just outed me to all of these people of my age, you know? You're right. I came in 1998 because a guidance counselor in high school told me I should be an accountant. And I mean, they weren't wrong. I just thought, so I did a couple of years at Mount Royal in accounting. And then I thought, heaven help me if somebody's going to put me in a back office with nothing but my calculator for the rest of my career. And so from there, I did HR, and I have an entrepreneurship degree now. But going to Mount Royal was because a guidance counselor said that would be a good idea for my career. And she was right. She absolutely was right.
And so during your time at MRU, what kind of shaped you, or what kind of sent you in a possibly different direction? Or was it maybe just knowing accounting wasn't for you?
So the thing I really loved about Mount Royal is it was a place to encourage you to do education. Whatever that education was, whatever passion you wanted to follow, Mount Royal was the place that encouraged you to do that and gave you the pathways to do that. I tried economics, also not for me. I know you're probably shocked to hear all of that, but it really was the place where possibility was there. And the instructors that didn't want to pigeonhole you into one place really encouraged you to do the thing that was going to be the best for you.
You know, what I'm hearing in what you're saying, Lindsay, is when we think about wellness, sometimes one of those life lessons is that just because you're good at something doesn't mean you should do it.
That is a mantra. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
I know, having taken a peek online and through LinkedIn, your resume is very full. How would you kind of describe what you're doing right now?
So I really love to support business owners, HR professionals, and individual contributors to do what they do best. So I have a number of ways that I do that. You mentioned my mental health work, my corporate mental health work. So I call myself a mental health skills trainer, and I help folks to navigate mental health at work, have those conversations and normalize those kinds of conversations at work so that everybody can feel like they are contributing in a way that feels best for them in a psychologically safe way. So that's probably the biggest thing that I do. And then I also support women business owners who are growing and scaling their businesses. And then I also help small business owners who are looking to get to that first 500K. We help them with sales and marketing through an organization called Catalyst.
Fantastic. So how does that generally go down? If I'm sure we have some folks who are listening who run businesses, and they probably have some concerns about mental well-being in their organizations, and they think to themselves, hey, I need help. What do you recommend? Where do they start?
Yeah, these are big rocks we're pushing uphill. Stigma is real in corporate, in most organizations. And so if you don't have an executive leader or the senior leader that's on board to support wellness of an organization, it's truly a boulder we're pushing uphill. So first off, I find out what's the psychological safety? What is that mental health maturity? Where are we going to put in the least amount of effort for the biggest amount of value? Where can we make instant impact so that we can almost prove out the value? Because there's something to be said for those personal experiences. Until you've had one, it's really hard to translate the power of increasing psychological safety in the workplace. I like to talk about the global pandemic and how, nothing like a phenomenon like that to help me spread my message, because for everyone, the pandemic was a real personal experience. Your wellness was probably up and down through those 4 or 5 years. So we all had that experience. And what that experience taught us is that we have permission to have conversations about what that impact was on us. And so connecting folks back to that experience or to other personal experiences can be really helpful in then translating that into the workplace as well. And so when somebody says to me, we want to do wellness in our workplace, fantastic. What's the level of psychological safety, and where do you want to get to? And what data do you have to support that? Because performance matters. ROI of this work matters. Employee wellness matters, but all of those things have to fit in together. And so, so that's where I start as a conversation around that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a bit of a journey with people when you're talking about their mental wellness. I used to be a psychologist at one point in my life, and I think one of the things I observed, and I'd like to check in with you on this, is how do you have those conversations in a safe manner, and how do you help people share their experience and help them to also understand how their well-being impacts the well-being of those people around them.
Yeah. So 2 things spring to mind. One is for leaders to consistently, typically show up as a safe person. So that when folks are feeling like their wellness isn't where they want it to be, that they know that they can go to their leader, their manager, their colleague to say, I'm not feeling very well right now, and know that the leader, colleague, manager is going to hold space for them. If you aren't typically showing up as a safe person, nobody's going to trust that you're going to show up as a safe person when it actually matters. So that comes to mind for me. And then the other thing is skills around response. So if a leader doesn't know what to say when, Tim, you come in my office to say, you know what, I'm not, my mental wellness isn't awesome today. If I respond back to you in a triggering way, in an unsafe way, in a dismissive way, and I don't hold space for you, there's no way you're coming back next time. So training managers and leaders how to respond. I think we forget that extra piece. We keep telling people, talk out loud, let's talk, all of those things. And I think, generally speaking, people are feeling courageous enough to do that. But I don't think leaders have the skills to actually respond in those scenarios. And it's actually eroding psychological safety.
You mentioned wellness and what managers and leaders can do. Is January, winter special challenge? Is it something different, or is it just kind of an extension of that playbook a bit?
I honestly think it's just another thing. It's the next thing. For sure, seasonal effectiveness disorder is a real condition. It is a thing that folks experience, especially when our days are short, when it's so darn cold you can't get outside. I mean, we know the benefits of being outside, right? Like the research is clear that being outside in nature is a real positive impact on our wellness. And when we can't do that because it's too darn dark and too darn cold, it absolutely matters. But I also think that it's just the next thing that is here to trip us up. So being proactive about our wellness all year and knowing personally some strategies that will help when we aren't feeling our best that we can pull out in January or October or July when we need it, I think that's more valuable than focusing on a particular time of year. What works for me may not work for you, Scott, may not work for you, Tim, for all of your listeners. So I'm going to give you some strategies and you're all going to take them with a grain of salt, and then you pick one and you're going to practice and you're going to stick with it for a bit until it doesn't work anymore and then try something different. So moving your body is a big deal. It doesn't have to be run a marathon or, lift 200 pounds. Honestly, you can start to feel better by washing the dishes. I am standing in my office giving this interview. That's helpful too. It can be those little movements that start, and then eventually your body's like, oh, wait, this mattered. This, maybe I want to do a little bit more of that. Maybe I'm going to walk the stairs instead of the elevator. Maybe I'm going to, maybe I am going to go for a little 5-kilometer run eventually, because our body will pick up on how good it feels and it will encourage you to want to do it again. So moving your body is a big deal. And then the last thing I'll say, actually 2 more things. Laughter. Your body can't distinguish fake laughter from real laughter. So even if you don't want to laugh, Google crazy cat videos. Google laughter yoga. Whatever you need to get that cycle, that positive laughter going, it's going to give you the benefit because your body doesn't know one way or the other. And I promise you it will turn into real laughter because it's ridiculous. And then the last one is crying. This is the worst one for me, but I know it works the best. You can cry in public, you can cry in private, you get the same benefits, but it's just that extra release valve. It's a way for your parasympathetic nervous system to get interrupted so that you can come back down to that baseline where you need to be.
Wow, those are some great suggestions. I think where my mind goes, Lindsay, is to people at different developmental stages in life. I'm sure some of the folks listening today have little kids. Some might have high school students, of course, at Mount Royal, because I'm still here. You got to leave, but I'm still here. We have a lot of traditional age students, kind of like that 19 to 25-year-old group. And there is some research on the mental health of students. And what the research basically says, going to school is really not very good for your mental health. Because it's hard and there's a lot of deadlines and, you're always being evaluated. So I wonder if, I think those are great general suggestions you have, but do any pop to mind that maybe university students or recent alumni might want to think about?
Yeah, so current students study in groups. Even if you sit at the table in the library across from each other and do your own work and don't talk at all, positive social interaction that's the thing. Figure out energy management. So if you have flexibility in your schedule, first think about when you have your best energy and try to book your classes into those time slots. You're going to be further ahead than if you're not a morning person booking an 8 o'clock class. If you have that kind of flexibility, just again, consider these kinds of things. And then if you do have that 8 o'clock class that you can't get out of because it's the only time block available, what can you do before that to manage your energy? We're talking protein breakfast, peanut butter toast, the thing. Have that peanut butter toast before you go to class. It's going to set you up for success. So think about your energy management and how you can control for that based on when you're at your best.
Thanks. Those are great suggestions.
You obviously know a ton about this space. I was wondering if there's anything you know now you wish you'd known as a student.
This person is much different than the person from 1998. Let me tell you. I believe compassion has the power to change the world. And that is not a word I would have used 20 years ago. It was uncomfortable. It was icky. It was a feeling. But honest to goodness, I believe compassion has the power to change the world. And I'm talking compassion for yourself and compassion for other people also. So curiosity, compassion, and lifelong learning are my top 3 values. And I think they're interchangeable. So as a student, if it is feeling extra hard and you are feeling like you're not living up to your own expectations, to other people's expectations, give yourself some grace. You're doing good things and you will get through these hard times. So that self-compassion is real. And when you see other people struggling or you see other people's behavior showing up in ways that's uncharacteristic for them or ways that maybe you don't want them to show up because it's terrible for your group project, have some compassion for them as well. Think about, instead of thinking, what's wrong with this person? Maybe we're considering what's happening for this person that's causing them to show up in this way. Having some compassion for what's could be happening and that they're just not telling you.
What do you suggest about someone kind of going from a campus to a results-driven field? The transition, is it something you just learn as you go, or what would you suggest?
Continue to learn, continue to take opportunities to build those networks. School is really great for that, right? You get to know the people in your classroom, they're thrown together, you go to different events because schools are really great at hosting events for students. Continue to look for opportunities to do that in the corporate world as well, whether it's in your organization, so, social events and potlucks, join all of those if you can, but also go to networking events where other people in your profession, other like-minded people are. Continue to stay connected because it's hard and it's hard to make that transition and it's easy to feel alone. So if you continue to make sure you surround yourself with people that are also going through similar scenarios, you can learn from each other and you just won't feel quite so alone in making that transition.
How about kind of the flip side? So from leadership's perspective, management's perspective, what's maybe some suggestions as to how a leader would get the most out of a junior level team member?
Compassion, but also to recognize the generational impacts. They are real. The language and definitions of particular words, of specific words, honestly, at that granular level, is going to be different from a millennial. Lots of our leaders are millennials, Gen Xers, to these Gen Alphas coming out of school. that gap is big. The definition of respect for Gen Alpha is going to be different than the definition of respect for a Gen Xer. Recognition of that, and an open-mindedness for the leader to hear and understand what it is the Gen Alpha is saying without judgment. That's probably one of the number one things I hear from leaders right now is these young folks have no work ethic. They don't want to work overtime. They're not contributing. Like, there is ways to motivate, and they're super smart, really great contributors. Figure out how they're motivated, because it's absolutely going to be different than you.
Yeah, it does feel sometimes we have a few things being layered in here. You've talked a lot about the generational divide here. You spoke before a little bit about energy management. And when I'm speaking with people, a lot of times they talk about their natural extroversion or introversion, and maybe how some of the things that they do to stay well might look different because of their need to kind of restore themselves by being on their own a little bit more, while other people are energized by being around people. And then I think I'll just throw in for good measure, and I don't expect you to have this wrapped up because I think all of us in society are kind of struggling with it, is the dialogue around in-person and hybrid, and how to kind of be a good employee, be a good friend, be a good family member, be a good employee, and do this in multiple modalities.
Yeah. That's not an easy question to answer. And it's for sure has tons of nuance to it. The thing that I think about when it comes to this, though, is teaching folks how to show up in those environments. So it's one thing to say everybody has to be in person. Okay, fine. But let's teach people how to show up. What does it mean to be in person? Is the reason you want them all in person to connect? Fantastic. Then make sure that your meeting rooms have everything you need so that they can connect. The number of people in the office taking online Teams meetings at their desk, that's a thing, right? So how are you enabling the environment to take advantage of everybody being in the same place? If it's hybrid, do your meeting rooms have virtual capabilities? And are you asking folks to bring their laptop into that meeting room as well or not? You have to consider the systems that will support whichever option you choose, and then teach them how to do it. I had an employee work for me a couple of years ago, just at a university, so smart. I adored her, so great, but she'd never worked at home before without somebody looking over her shoulder from an accountability perspective. And so it finally occurred to me that she literally didn't know how to work in this environment. And once I taught her, life changed for both of us. It was amazing. But because I'd only ever worked in an office, she didn't know how to not have that somebody looking over her shoulder. And so those kinds of things, I think everybody's experience is different, and we can't make assumptions that their way of working is the same as ours, or that they even know how to work the way that we do.
Yeah, one of what I'm taking away from some of what you're saying here is the importance of that conversation, that compassionate conversation. I've been engaged in conversations about hybrid work, and often I hear this notion that, oh, I'm so productive when I'm working at home. And, where my mind goes is like, I am actually the most productive in terms of knocking things off my to-do list when I'm in an airplane.
That's real.
And so, but that's not my job. And so it feels really good to knock those things off my to-do list. But if my colleagues never see me, I'm not going to be successful. And so it feels to me like sometimes we need to have a conversation about what are some of the things that you might not see in your job description, or we have not yet put in job descriptions that say, actually, part of your job is to encourage your coworkers. Part of your job is to listen. So in some of the corporate work you're doing, are some of those themes coming out?
Ish. This is an opportunity to rethink performance metrics, I think. I think we're very much still bums in seats, 8 to 5, managing performance based on task-oriented achievements. And I think we have an opportunity to think differently about that, where we can set objectives based on knowledge work. What if we gave people time to just sit and think and didn't judge them for it because their hands weren't on the keyboard? What if we didn't measure performance by how quickly our team's status goes to away because we're having those thinking conversations, right? We're like lots of organizations are setting their teams. That's a great example. Setting their teams to 5 minutes not touching your mouse means that you're away. So obviously you're not working. Or you're doing your job by encouraging your colleagues, by going to somebody's office and taking advantage of the fact that they're down the hall and not at home. We have the opportunity to change performance management metrics, to have it be objective based, and conceptual based, moving projects ahead in whatever way they can, and having conversations about that. But I really think we have opportunity here to do those things and to actually change the way that we manage and support people.
Amen. I'm with you.
What I can remember when I first entered the workforce, and the workplace dynamic was much different than it is now. You mentioned the hybrid, AI integration, mental health awareness, no chain smoking at your desk, for instance, it's frowned upon. What would you like to see moving forward in terms of stuff yet to happen in the workplace?
I would really like for everyone to feel comfortable saying to their manager, I'm going to see my psychologist. I'll be back in an hour. We all feel comfortable saying I have a doctor's appointment, right? I'm going to the dentist. But I'd really like someone to say, I'm going to see my counselor. I'll be back, or I'll be back online. I'd also really like to see people feel confident that they know what to say in response to that. When somebody's behavior isn't, typical for them. If there's an outburst in a meeting, I would really like a manager to feel like they know what to say afterwards to that employee to help them through whatever it is obviously going on. Because I promise you, people don't just forget to do their job, right? There is something happening for them. And I would really like managers and leaders and colleagues, truly, to know the words and the language, to know how to have those conversations, to help in the moment.
I know on occasion we hear the word burnout. It seems like kind of a dirty word, but is there something you'd suggest in terms of coping, recovery? I hear even occasionally, probably from the older set, that it's a made-up term. What do you think about that? And what would you say to a manager who doesn't believe in it?
Oh my, you're going to get me on my soapbox now. So, burnout is real. The World Health Organization has characterized it as a workplace syndrome relating to the efforts at work. Burnout is not having too much stress. We all have a ton of stress, and it's how we can manage it, navigate it. Burnout is actually that tipping point when we go from having too much of something, too much stress, too much pressure, too many deadlines, tipping over into feeling like we don't have enough. Not enough energy, not enough cares left to give. It is when you get to the place of complete and utter physical and emotional exhaustion, depletion, when literally consequences don't matter anymore. This has happened to me twice. The first time was in 2018, and the second time was in 2021. And I am a motivated, structured, passionate person. And all of a sudden, I did not care if I got up and went to work. The consequences honestly do not matter. You can come back from burnout, but absolutely do not minimize people who are feeling like they're in that place. Even if they're not all the way in, the fact that they're even talking to you about feeling like they're in that slide to burnout is real. But the one thing that I want folks to take away is if it matters to someone, it matters. It doesn't matter if it matters to you. If it matters to them, it matters, and it's real and it's valuable, and you get to hold space and you get to get them the help that they need. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to tell them what to do because you don't know what's going to work for them. But if it matters to them, it matters. Because in the reverse, you'd want them to care about what matters to you. So minimizing it, not the way to go. Recognizing it, supporting them, and getting them the help that they need, that's the thing that is going to be super valuable.
So I have an observation, Lindsay, and I wonder if it would resonate with you. And one of those things is when I have seen some folks, and I've had my own, burnout experience, don't get me wrong, but when I've seen folks who it appears to me are on the precipice of burnout, who might not be discussing that it does kind of behoove us to check in with that person. If you can intervene and bring someone back from the brink of burnout, chances are that's better for them. It's probably better for the organization because it's easier to bring someone back who hasn't yet completely fallen into that burnout feeling. Would you say that's something you've observed?
100%. 100%. I will tell you, I didn't recognize I was in burnout in 2018. I didn't even know what that meant. Somebody said to me, the fact that you've lost your zest for life, the fact that you don't care if you achieve the goals you've set for yourself, somebody had to point it out to me. The number one thing I look for now in my behavior is pulling away from my friends and family.
Right.
It took me a year to tell anybody that there was something happening for me. If somebody had said to me, your behavior is different, I'm not seeing you as much, you say you're not sleeping, have you thought about why that might be? That would have saved me so much time and effort and heartbreak. And that education was huge for me. When somebody said to me, hey, I've noticed this, I've seen this change, pointing out some specifics, it would not have been helpful if somebody said to me, you're being really grouchy right now, figure it out.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I had an experience. This was in the 90s, actually, probably about the time you were a student at Mount Royal. But I had an employee say to me, I was a director in an organization, and a fairly junior employee said something to me that really shifted my understanding. She was brave enough to come to me and say, "You're bleeding on us." And because I was a bit, like poor me. And so it was a chance for me to reflect and say, oh, you know what, maybe I'm not okay. I need to take better care of myself here. There's probably some things I need to do. I probably need to go to speak with my supervisor. I probably need to take a breath of air, maybe take a walk, maybe eat something other than a Reese's peanut butter cup. Something like that. And I even see in myself now, luckily, that's not something that has occurred a lot in my career, but I do notice that when I'm overwhelmed, I lose things. So if in a week I'm like, where are my keys? Where did I put that? Where did I put that? It's a good sign for me to say, hey, it's early, it's not burnout, but it's like, maybe things aren't going so well if you can't find stuff.
Right. Exhaustion. Totally. Yeah. That good awareness on you. I have a list of 13 things to watch for, and to watch for in other people. And they're things like that. Is their cognition not what it typically is? Is their patience level not what it typically is? And for a colleague to say to you, you're bleeding on us, good on them, but also it speaks to behavior. There's no shame, there's no fault,
Yep.
it's just like an observation of behavior. And I really feel like that's valuable. It doesn't put anybody's opinion. It doesn't say, you're doing this to me, because then you get shame and blame involved. But just helping folks to recognize their behavior and the impact it's having can be valuable.
Yeah, and one of my feelings is that these are lifelong skills, right? And I know that we're talking a lot about alumni, and you're an alumnus, as is Scott. But when I think about some of the folks who are currently studying at Mount Royal, I think how beneficial it would be for them to learn those skills early, so that they can kind of live a life of purpose and compassion.
And have no doubt these are skills. And we're not going to call them soft skills. Again, I will get on my soapbox about that. These are hard, for first off, but also there's something soft about these things. Everybody will have a baseline of these skills, but they are absolutely skills you can increase your knowledge of, your practice of. So if you are feeling, anyone who's listening, if you are feeling like you'd like to be more compassionate, there are literal things you can do to increase your compassion. If you want to be, better at resiliency, there are absolutely practices you can put into place to build your resiliency. These are absolutely skills to learn. Mm-hmm.
Well, Lindsay, thank you so much. You do MRU proud being out there talking about compassion and wellness. Hopefully, some good outcomes from this podcast. Hopefully, your phone will be ringing, and there'll be many alumni who are looking for your assistance to spread the word, and you can help some folks kind of align their lives.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you. I had no idea what to expect, but this was super fun. So thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.